This video looks at wetting and drying processes. In the soil properties topic, we noted that fine soils need to be at or close to the optimum water content to allow them to be compacted to their maximum density. The maximum density, or maximum dry density, is where they would have the highest bearing capacity because they would be at their densest and there would be more particle connections between the soil particles and the soil. Water in the soil allows soil particles to slide into a more compact matrix. Therefore, if a soil is too dry, then it needs to be wetted to the required water content that would allow it to be properly compacted. However, too much water results in the water in the soil holding the soil particles apart under compaction loads, and so they're not able to settle into the compact soil mass. In this case, the soil is too wet, and so it needs to be dried. The optimum water content is the water content at which the soil is neither too wet nor too dry. If a fine soil is at the optimum water content, then it should be able to be compacted to the maximum density and is unlikely to settle further. Note that at this water content there is no excess water in the voids, so the soil is also fully consolidated. So we need to test the material before we compact it and adjust the water content as required. If the soil is too wet, then it needs to be dried before it is compacted. Drying involves leaving the soil exposed to allow it to be naturally dried by the sun and the wind. Its drying process is usually speeded up by regularly turning the soil using discs mounted on a tractor. The harrow, the discs turn the soil so the underlying wet soil is exposed to the drying processes. You can see that in the photo here with the tractor hauling a trailer with discs on it. Drying may be done before transportation, with the soil being ploughed or ripped in the cut area and left to dry. When the soil is laid in the fill area, as is the case here, but before it is compacted, or it can be transported to another area where it is left to dry before being transported again to a fill area. This last option is inefficient as it involves double handling the soil, but it may be necessary when the other two options are not viable due to wet ground conditions or lack of space. Drying is often the critical process in an earth-moving operation, as it is almost completely weather dependent and cannot be sped up by providing more or bigger plant. If a soil is too dry, then it needs to be wetted. This is done by spraying water over it using a water cart. The water cart is basically a truck with a water tank mounted on it and a spray bar extending across the whole width of the back of the truck. The water cart weaves its way over the dry soil to wet the whole area of the dry soil. Disking may also be used to mix the wet soil into the lower layers of dry soil to provide even wetting of the whole soil layer. Wetting is usually done when the soil has been laid in the fill area and before compaction. The water can evaporate after application, which would reduce the water content, so it is a good idea to commence compaction as soon as possible after wetting. However, this photo shows a water cart in action, but in this case, it's being used to damp down a road to prevent dust production rather than wetting the soil. The same type of truck does both jobs.